Step down, turn your hands up. Step down, turn around, face away from me.
Everybody got a random tell me what person for?
Tanner? Sorry. Okay.
On a quiet afternoon in late November 2022, a 7-year-old girl stepped outside her home in rural Texas. A FedEx delivery truck was pulling away from the driveway. Within hours, she would be gone. And the man driving that truck had just delivered her Christmas present. Her name was Athena Strand. She was 7 years old, a first grader living near Boyd, Texas, a small community in Wise County, northwest of Fort Worth, where daily life moved slowly and familiarity still shaped the rhythm of the town. It was the kind of place where children played outside without much concern, where neighbors recognized each other's vehicles from down the road, where delivery drivers stopping at a home barely registered as an event. Nothing about that afternoon initially seemed unusual, until it became one of the most devastating child abduction cases the region had seen in years. Athena was described by her family as energetic, expressive, and deeply loved. Her mother, Maitland Gandy, later spoke publicly about the kind of child Athena was, someone with a bright personality, quick emotions, and the kind of presence that naturally drew attention. Not because she demanded it, but because she carried a warmth that people noticed immediately. She laughed easily, talked constantly, and according to relatives, she had a habit of making even ordinary moments feel bigger than they were. At the time, Athena had been staying with her father and stepmother in the Boyd area while the family home underwent renovations. The living arrangements were temporary and somewhat unconventional. Athena and her stepsister were sleeping in a converted storage structure next to the main house, a makeshift bedroom created during construction. It was not intended to be permanent, just a temporary adjustment while the property was being repaired. November 30th, 2022, began like any other weekday. Christmas was approaching. Packages were arriving constantly at homes across the country, and in neighborhoods like Boyd, delivery trucks moved in and out all day without drawing attention. That afternoon, a FedEx driver arrived at the Strand residence with a package. Nothing about the stop appeared suspicious, at least not at first. What investigators later pieced together is this. Sometime earlier in the afternoon, Athena had gotten into a minor argument with her stepmother, Ashley Strand. Authorities never publicly disclosed the exact nature of the disagreement, and by all accounts, it appeared to be ordinary household tension, the kind that happens in families every day. A child upset, an adult correcting behavior, nothing that would normally carry any significance. After the argument, Athena walked outside. Ashley later told investigators she believed Athena had gone to the converted shed to calm down. According to the family, that was not unusual. Athena sometimes needed space after becoming emotional. Children isolate themselves for a while, they cool off, then they come back. That was the assumption. But this time, she never returned. At approximately the same time Athena was outside, a FedEx delivery driver named Tanner Lynn Horner had arrived at the property. He was 31 years old and working a contracted delivery route in Wise County. Investigators later determined that after completing the delivery, Horner saw Athena near the driveway. What happened next would not become publicly known until after his arrest. But according to investigators, that brief encounter outside the home lasted only minutes, before Athena disappeared completely. At first, no one understood the urgency. There was no immediate sign of violence, no scream reported by neighbors, no damaged property, no obvious evidence left behind. Just a child suddenly unaccounted for in a quiet rural area shortly before dark. And for a period of time, the situation was treated the way many missing child cases initially are, as a possibility that she had wandered off nearby, maybe hiding, maybe upset, maybe somewhere close. But as the hours passed, concern escalated quickly. Because Athena was not answering calls, not responding to family searching the property. And there was one detail investigators would soon realize mattered more than anyone understood in that moment. The FedEx truck had been the last confirmed vehicle at the house before Athena vanished. By nightfall, law enforcement agencies across Wise County had already begun mobilizing. Search teams, drones, K-9 units, volunteers, entire sections of the area were being combed in darkness. And somewhere beyond that search perimeter, a man who had spent the day delivering holiday packages was carrying a secret that investigators had not yet uncovered. One that would transform a missing child investigation into something far worse. Children get upset. They walk away for a while. They sit alone. They calm down. And then eventually, they come back inside. That was what the adults in the house believed Athena was doing. But while they waited for her to return, a delivery driver was already pulling into the driveway. His name was Tanner Lynn Horner, 31 years old, a contract driver working deliveries for a company called Big Topspin, which operated routes on behalf of FedEx in Wise County. That afternoon, he arrived at the Strand property carrying holiday packages. One of them belonged to Athena. Her mother, Maitland Gandy, had ordered a set of Barbie dolls from Mattel's You Can Be Anything collection. A small Christmas gift, but also something more personal than that. The kind of gift parents choose because it reflects possibility. Barbie the doctor. Barbie the astronaut. Barbie the president. You can be anything. Horner dropped off the package and returned to his van. And somewhere in the moments that followed, the case changed permanently. According to the arrest affidavit later filed by investigators, Horner gave detectives a version of events after his arrest. He claimed that while backing out of the driveway, he accidentally struck Athena with the delivery vehicle. He said he panicked. According to his statement, Athena was still conscious afterward, speaking, able to identify herself. And that detail became critical. Because, if true, it meant there was still time. Time to call for help. Time to notify her family. Time to make a different decision. Instead, prosecutors say, he made another one. Rather than contacting emergency services, Horner placed Athena inside the FedEx van and drove away from the property. Later, he told investigators he was afraid she would tell her father what had happened. And in that moment, what could have remained an accident became something else entirely. Investigators later determined that Athena was killed shortly after being taken, within approximately 1 hour. 1 hour between standing outside her home on a Wednesday afternoon and losing her life. Authorities have never publicly detailed every aspect of what happened inside the van, and much of the evidence presented in court was intentionally limited because of the child's age and the nature of the crime. But prosecutors later described the violence as severe and deeply disturbing, not impulsive, not explainable by panic alone. As the investigation progressed, Horner's original explanation came under increasing scrutiny. Because according to prosecutors, the evidence did not support a narrative of fear-driven confusion. They argued that his account was inconsistent, self-serving, and designed to minimize responsibility after the fact. Back at the house, concern was escalating quickly. As evening approached, Athena Strand began actively searching for Athena. She checked the storage building, the yard, the surrounding property. She called out for her repeatedly. There was no response. That night, Athena Strand was officially reported missing, and within hours, the case began drawing statewide attention. Search teams mobilized across Wise County. Law enforcement agencies coordinated road searches, drone operations, and interviews. Volunteers joined in. Photos of Athena spread rapidly online. A smiling 7-year-old girl with bright eyes and a gap-toothed grin that immediately made the case personal for people far beyond Texas. Investigators started reconstructing the timeline. Who had been near the house? What vehicles had entered the property? Which deliveries had been made? And very quickly, one name surfaced repeatedly. Tanner Horner. Delivery records placed him at the home during the exact window investigators believed Athena disappeared. From there, detectives moved quickly. Horner was located and brought in for questioning. And according to Wise County Sheriff Lane Aiken, the interview changed everything. Authorities stated that Horner confessed, not only to abducting Athena, but to killing her. He also directed investigators to the location where her body had been left. In early December 2022, Athena Strand was found near the Trinity River area, approximately 9 miles from her home. She was 7 years old. Tanner Horner was arrested shortly afterward. He was initially charged with capital murder and aggravated kidnapping. But as investigators processed forensic evidence and continued examining the timeline, prosecutors began building a broader picture of what had happened. And according to the state, that picture suggested something more calculated than the story Horner first tried to tell. The full scope of what prosecutors say happened to Athena Strand inside that delivery van was never presented publicly in complete detail, and intentionally so. Out of respect for Athena, out of respect for her family, but investigators made it clear that the evidence they recovered painted a picture of violence so severe that even experienced law enforcement officers struggled to process it. People connected to the case later described the details as almost impossible to comprehend, not because they were complicated, but because of how cruel they were. For the community of Boyd, Texas, the grief deepened all over again. At first, residents had been trying to understand how a 7-year-old girl could disappear from her own driveway in broad daylight. Now they were being forced to confront something much darker, that the person responsible had arrived at the house as part of an ordinary workday. A delivery driver. Someone trusted to enter neighborhoods, pull into family driveways, and interact with homes where children lived. In February 2023, Tanner Horner was formally indicted on charges of capital murder and aggravated kidnapping. At that stage, he pleaded not guilty. And while the criminal case moved through the court system, Athena's family was left with questions no legal proceeding could fully answer. How did this happen? Why her? And could anything have prevented it? That same month, Athena's father filed a civil lawsuit against Tanner Horner, FedEx, and Big Topspin, the contractor responsible for employing him on the delivery route. The lawsuit alleged negligence in both hiring and supervision. According to the filing, the companies failed to properly investigate Horner's background before placing him in a delivery vehicle and sending him into residential neighborhoods. Months later, Athena's mother, Maitland Gandy, joined the lawsuit as well. The language in the filing was direct. It stated that Athena was a vibrant child whose life had been taken senselessly. That her death was not only tragic, but preventable. FedEx later acknowledged the lawsuit publicly and stated that their thoughts remained with Athena's family. But beyond that, the broader legal questions remained unresolved. Because cases like this force a difficult conversation. When companies place employees into positions that involve direct access to homes, neighborhoods, and families, what level of responsibility do they carry for the people they hire? For more than 2 years, the criminal case slowly moved toward trial. Tanner Horner maintained his not guilty plea throughout that period. His legal team prepared for a full courtroom defense. And in April 2026, the trial officially began in Wise County, Texas. But before the jury could begin deliberations, something changed. On April 7, 2026, Tanner Horner reversed course. He entered a guilty plea to capital murder and aggravated kidnapping. Just like that, the trial shifted. No longer about whether he committed the crime, but about what punishment would follow. Only one question remained. Would he receive the death penalty, or spend the rest of his life in prison? As the sentencing phase began, prosecutors focused heavily on Horner's original version of events. Because according to the state, the story he told investigators was never about truth. It was about minimizing responsibility. Wise County District Attorney James Stainton addressed that directly in court. He told jurors that the only truthful statement Horner had made was admitting that Athena was dead. Everything else, prosecutors argued, had been constructed to reduce the appearance of intent, to make deliberate action sound accidental. And then the prosecution presented one of the most important pieces of evidence in the case. Jurors were shown an image taken from inside the FedEx delivery vehicle. The image showed Athena alive in the back of the truck, awake, alert, on her knees. That evidence directly contradicted the core of Horner's explanation, because his original account depended on the idea that panic had followed an accident. But prosecutors argued the footage demonstrated something entirely different. Not confusion, not an attempt to help, but a conscious decision to take her. And once that image was shown in court, the narrative Horner had tried to build around the crime began to collapse completely. During the sentencing phase, prosecutors focused on what they described as the clearest indication of intent. According to the state, after Athena was forced into the back of the delivery van, Tanner Horner immediately tried to control her through fear. Prosecutors alleged that the first thing he told the 7-year-old child was simple: "Don't scream, or I'll hurt you." For the prosecution, that statement mattered, because it directly challenged the idea that this had been panic after an accident. It suggested awareness, control, a conscious understanding of what he was doing from the very beginning. The defense presented a different picture. Horner's attorneys argued that he had struggled with significant mental and developmental issues throughout his life. They stated that he was autistic and had experienced long-term psychological difficulties, which they claimed were connected to prenatal alcohol exposure and possible lead exposure during childhood. Rather than seeking execution, the defense asked jurors to sentence him to life in prison without parole. But underneath the legal arguments, expert testimony, and courtroom strategy, the emotional center of the case never changed. Because at the center of it all was still a 7-year-old girl, and a mother trying to understand how something so ordinary became irreversible. After Athena's death, Maitland Gandy spoke publicly about the package that had been delivered that afternoon. The Barbie dolls. The You Can Be Anything collection she had ordered for her daughter before Christmas. It was supposed to be a gift about possibility, about imagination, about a future. Instead, the package arrived in the same vehicle that took Athena away forever. And that detail stayed with people, because it captured something impossible to fully process: how quickly innocence can collide with violence. Maitland later said that her daughter had been robbed of the chance to become anything she wanted to be, and that the gift she bought with love was one Athena would never get to open. She also spoke about the trust people place in ordinary routines, the expectation that some roles in society are simple, predictable, safe. A delivery driver arrives, drops off a package, and leaves. That's all. That was all that was supposed to happen that day. By April 2026, Tanner Horner had already pleaded guilty. There was no possibility of release. The only remaining decision was whether he would spend the rest of his life in prison or be sentenced to death.
It's been a heck of a month. I want to thank you up front for being so attentive and giving us your time away from home, away from your families, away from work. We appreciate that. The way it works today is I've got a few things to say. The defense will have a few things to say, and then I will finish, and you will get the charge of the court that the judge just read you. I'm not going to go through all the evidence in the case. I don't have enough time. The judge gives me an hour, and then I get the hook, so to speak. But I do think there are some things that are important. And this is the number one thing that I think is most important right here. This is what's most important. This is why we're here. The picture sat in my office for months. And I looked at it every day. It's a reminder on those days, why do I get up again? Why do I keep doing this? And this picture was taken, she didn't know she only had 4 days left to live when that picture was taken. When that picture was taken, I didn't know that 6 days after that, I'd be talking to my sheriff. And you heard from him, a former Texas Ranger, a fairly grizzled veteran of law enforcement, that I'd be sitting there with him and not a dry eye between us. I knew then that I would be here in front of you. But why are we here? We're here for her. We're here for her memory, her voice, a little bow on her head, smile on her face, love in her heart. That's why we're here. She can't see justice. We're here for her. When you all got qualified and we went through the whole process, we talked about a lot of things. And one of the things that I think we talked about is the death penalty, and a lot of people are reluctant on that, and we should be. And it should be used in only the most extreme cases. Now, those cases, intentional, cold-blooded, planning, premeditation, victims that can't help themselves, children. Cases where the victim is sexually assaulted prior to their death. Cases where there's no mercy shown to the victim. Cases like this. This is what, and the reason why that Texas keeps the death penalty here. This is why. This is the type of case. And I'm going to tell you, Tanner Horner is proof why parents hug their children a little tighter. He's proof of why children are nervous to go play outside. He's proof of why there's evil in society and we can never turn our back. Now, 2015, May 23rd, Athena, she was born. 18 days from today, she turned 11. 18 days. If you'll remember on opening, we talked a lot about past tense. And I'm not even trying with the glasses anymore because my eyes are smoked after this trial. We talked a lot about would. We talked about past tense. And I think it's important. We've heard a lot about people's past, but I think it's important to talk about what would have been. You know, when we talk about Athena, I feel like we want to talk about when she would have graduated. She would have been a Paradise Panther class of 2033. She would have celebrated her birthday party in 18 days. And I can promise you there would have been an overload of pink. That's all would. Okay. The other questions we look at is the future. We look at, when you look at it, you ask yourself, who would she marry? Who would be her first boyfriend? Real boyfriend. Some things that I thought about is what kind of shoes would she wear under her wedding dress? Those things are important. Who would she marry? Right? What kind of job would she have? That's what's important here. Her future. And the fact that Tanner Horner cut that short. Brutally cut that short. So that's why we're here today. Tried to do all this by memory. It just doesn't happen. We've been here 5 weeks now. It just doesn't happen. So the big thing here is this case is going to require a tough choice. We all know this. But the right thing is often the toughest choice. Now, we're taught as baby lawyers, we're supposed to get up here and bring all the fire and brimstone. And I can assure you, I can generate some fire and brimstone. But this isn't the case for it. I can't do any more or say anything more than what you've already seen on that screen. There's nothing I can do. There's no amount of fire and brimstone. There's no amount of jumping up and down and being like that could ever come close to what you've already seen. And I'm not even going to try. The evidence in this case I'm not going to go through it because it is massive. But the big point of all of this evidence is this. If you start at the beginning, you know the facts. You heard the facts. When I came up here in opening, I told you I was going to put you as close as you could be to actually being there. And I did not lie. In this case, the evidence, we talked about the worst of the worst and the cases that like this, cases that have planning or premeditation. Don't discount the fact that somebody decided to cover up the camera an hour before, 2 days in a row, on exactly the same road with 2 different locations with 2 little girls that were there. You saw the videos. My suspicion is those husband girls would have been first if the parents hadn't come out. They were first. Only when that didn't happen, Dean was second. So the evidence speaks for itself. When you talk about planning, it's not all just pre-planning. It's the understanding of what you're going to do after. For somebody that is having some form of catastrophe and inability to think or solve problems, out of all the random roads you could have chosen to go and sexually assault Athena, you drive right to it. You know the road, you know what's going on, you know the bumps, you know what's there. You don't pick some random road. You go to where you know it's secluded. That's planning. That's not somebody having a catastrophe and doesn't know where they are. Okay. So, but we know what he wants. We know because you heard it. One.
Judge, can we purge?
Can all the members of the jury see the board? Board is a little small. We know what he wants. And we know what's coming. Dina didn't know what was coming. He knows what's coming. That's not the eyes, that's not the look of someone who doesn't have a plan, doesn't have motivation, that hasn't thought this out, that hasn't fantasized about this. That's the look of a predator right there. Now, about the evidence, you know what happened. I'm not going to go over that anymore. There's a couple of things here that I think are important. I talked to you about DNA, and I think DNA is important. The only acceptable answer in this case is that Tanner Horner was excluded. That's the only acceptable answer. And that's not the answer we have. Period. It's not that, well, we found some DNA, it was his, but, maybe it's not enough. It's like when Dr. Ryan got up there and said, well, he's not a pedophile. It only happened one time. I beg to differ with that. Now, when we talk about the murder and what happened, you guys heard it. And I don't want anybody to ever forget what kind of warrior that little girl was. I don't know if anybody could have withstood what she withstood over and over again. I don't know anybody that could have withstood that. He can choke her, he can beat her, he can do it over and over again. But what do we know? We know the end result was right here. This is what it took. That's what it took to beat the life out of her. And I think that is key to this entire case. If the facts were not bad enough, if the sexual assault wasn't bad enough, the level of violence that one person can inflict on a child, including stomping them with a pair of shoes, I'm not wondering where that tread-like print came from anymore, because we know. Now, like I said, the defense is going to get up here after me. They're going to have some things to say as well. That's how it works, okay? But what I anticipate is going to be a continuation of what you've already heard. His brain's broken somehow. He's got all these conditions. He's got all these ailments, all these things. He may have some or part of those. Apparently, according to Dr. Young, he even got low T. We even got the lead paint guy. Now, I don't know about the lead paint guy. I don't know if it works or not. I don't know if his little homemade zapper works or not. I honestly don't know. But what I do know is this. If you're going to come in here and try to convince us that somebody has all this lead in their system that's causing all the problems, why don't you test anybody else? I mean, if you want us to believe you and all this stuff's going on, why don't you test the other people in the house? I don't think you want to know the answer. That's why you don't do it. So when we get up here, it's going to be a lot of talk about second chance. It's going to be a lot of talk about, maybe mercy. There's going to be a lot of talk about, his deficits and disabilities and things of that nature. But let's remember this. Everything they're telling you is an excuse. I know it's an excuse because it took 6 or 7 experts and $500,000 to come up here and tell you it's not an excuse. That's how you know. If you've got to work that hard to try to prove that some kind of excuse, we know what the answer is. They're trying to get you to excuse his conduct. They're trying to get you to be less angry or less blameworthy on somebody for their conduct. But I submit to you the truth and the facts and circumstances are what's most important. What he did is most important. Now, in looking at all of this, if you want mercy and you want somebody to consider giving you life when you gave no life here, when you gave no mercy here, what does it start with? I like to think it starts with the truth. I like to think it starts with not lying. I like it things to start with, if you have experts and you're being interviewed, not continuing to fabricate stories, not continuing to lie to you, not continue to try to cover, not continue to try to shade this or change the narrative. I think that the difference between wanting mercy and earning it are two separate things. So, now, what you've heard for the past 2 weeks is that the person driving that vehicle, you can see it right here, this person right here driving this vehicle. You've heard for the last 2 weeks every form of ailment one could possibly have. And you heard about the last 2 weeks how that person can't cope, has stress, has the inability to do basically anything on the earth whatsoever, and essentially is incapable of doing anything. If you have any doubt about that, watch the 8 minutes of this video right here, from when he pulls in to Athena's driveway until he covers up the camera. If you have any doubt about somebody's ability to do and participate and be out in the world, watch that video. Because it's real clear. That's an individual who knows what they're doing. That's an individual who's hunting. That's an individual who's looking around and understanding what's around them. That is an individual who is absolutely lethal. That's an individual who targeted somebody, found somebody, tricked somebody, got him into the vehicle. You all saw when he took his hand and he put it over her mouth. He knows what's coming. You all saw right here. You all saw right here. Bungee cords, trying to tie somebody up. You all saw that. This is not an individual that's on some form of stress-fueled catastrophe. And the cocaine nonsense, come on. Just another lie. Just another lie. But guess what? When you know that you've been caught covering up the camera, and you know you've been caught, what do? You come up with another lie that fits your narrative. That's what you do. And that's what's happened in this case. It's lie upon lie upon lie. This person driving this vehicle, cool, calm, and obviously you know, lethal. So, are you going to believe what you hear up here, that this person is basically can't even get up in the morning? Or are you going to believe your eyes and what you see and hear? The only sentence in this case that gives justice to her is answering those two questions. Yes and no. Thank you, Judge.
The court has received notification from the jury that they have reached a verdict. Both sides ready to receive the verdict?
Ready, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, this courtroom is very full, and I do not know what this verdict is. But remember, whatever the verdict is, we're in a courtroom, all right? And there will be no reactions to the verdict, all right? Let's go to work. All right, everyone may be seated. Good afternoon. Mr. Presiding Juror, it is my understanding jury has reached a verdict on both issues. Yes. Okay, if you'd hand it please to Deputy King. Answers to special issues. Special issue number one, whether there is a probability that the defendant would commit criminal acts of violence that would constitute a continuing threat to society. Answer, we, the jury, unanimously find beyond a reasonable doubt that the answer to special issue number one is yes, signed by the presiding juror. Special issue number two, whether taking into consideration all the evidence, including the circumstances of the offense, the defendant's character and background, and the personal moral culpability of the defendant. There is a sufficient mitigating circumstance or circumstances to warrant that a sentence of life imprisonment without parole rather than a death sentence be imposed. Answer: we, the jury, unanimously find that the answer to special issue number 2 is no. Signed by the presiding juror. Does either side desire a poll?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Anderson, Mr. Goebel, is there any legal reason why sentence should not be pronounced?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Horner, if you'd stand, please. It's the order of the court that you, Tanner Lynn Horner, has been adjudged to be guilty of the offense of capital murder as found by the jury. Jury having answered the special issues, making it mandatory that your punishment be death, it is therefore the order of this court that your punishment be death. Before the hour of sunrise on a date to be determined by this court, upon a mandate of affirmance issued by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals at the State Penitentiary in Huntsville, Texas, you will be caused to die in accordance with the rules and regulations established by the Texas Department of Criminal Justice until you, said Tanner Horner, are dead. Said execution procedure shall be determined and supervised by the Director of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. The clerk of this court shall issue a death warrant in accordance with this sentence directed to the Director of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for that purpose. Clerk shall deliver such warrant to the sheriff of this county and to be by him delivered to the Director of the Department of Criminal Justice together with you, and you will remain to the custody of the Tarrant County Jail to await transportation to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice at Huntsville, Texas, and the execution of this sentence. I will sign this death sentence as required by law. Your appeal of the finding of this guilt by the jury and their determination of the answers to the question in this sentence are automatically appealed to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals in Austin, Texas. You will be appointed a lawyer to represent you on direct appeal, and your lawyer will receive a copy of the record of this charge, of this case at no charge. You have the right to have a second lawyer to represent you on writs of habeas corpus. It's a separate matter from your direct appeal. Do you wish to have counsel appointed for your writ purposes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I will appoint you writ lawyers for that. Ms. Anderson, Mr. Goebel, if you will remain on his case pending his decision, and we have all the appellate paperwork filled out, I have received his acknowledgement certification of the right to appeal, and I appreciate you doing that. You may be seated. Is there an allocution? He may speak. He may speak from wherever he feels the most comfortable.
I'm Athena Strand. I'm Jacob's brother, Athena's uncle. There are no words that truly capture the devastation that Tanner Horner caused us and our family. What he took from this world was not just a child. He took a life, a future, and a piece of every single person he loved. He took a granddaughter, a daughter, a niece, a cousin, and a friend. She would call me Uncle Elijah because she, for the longest time, couldn't say the Elijah part of my name. It was the best thing to see her running up to me with her arms open, yelling, "Uncle Elijah." And it's one of my last memories I have of her. And now I get to never hear that again. Athena was more than a headline. She was laughter, curiosity, kindness, and innocence. And she had dreams that she will never get to chase. Birthdays that she will never celebrate. And a life she'll never get to live because of his actions. Our family has been left with an emptiness they can never be filled. I have 3 daughters, 2 that got to meet her and grow with her, and 1 that will never meet. And he took that away from them as well, a cousin and a friend. He stole a sense of safety from all of us in our family. Me and my wife just got comfortable enough to let our kids play outside, and that's even in our backyard. It's not close to the road. He's robbed us of safety, peace, and our trust in the world, and forever changed who we are as a family. We are left to carry grief that never fades. We are left with questions that will still never have answers. And we are left trying to honor a beautiful little girl whose life was taken in the most senseless and horrific way. Tanner Horner, I want you to hear this directly. You did not just take a life, you destroyed a family. You took a little girl who trusted the world and repaid that innocence with violence. You chose to cause pain that will last generations. You say you found God, but what you did to Athena stands in direct opposition to everything that you now claim to believe. In Matthew 18:6, it says, if anyone causes one of these little ones to stumble, it would be better for them to have a millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned. That is how seriously harm against a child is judged. And you will be judged. You will face the wrath of God. But I want you to know that you are nothing. You are a footnote in Athena's story. Her name will forever be remembered. Her name will forever be celebrated, and everyone will forget you. You wanted your 15 minutes of fame. You got it. And no one's going to remember you after this.
Mr. Staten, any other allocutions?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
He's your prisoner, Sheriff. Ladies and gentlemen, this will conclude your service as jurors. I bet in December, don't sit down.
Thank you, Judge.
In December, that you got that mailbox and saw a jury summons and you never thought you'd be involved in this, okay? Well, here we are 6 months later, and I thank you. And also in your presence, I want to thank the lawyers. Lawyers in real life don't behave like they do on television, okay? Mr. Staten, Mr. Berry, Ms. Dool, Mr. Lapham, all the members of the staff, they represent citizens of Wise and Jack County. And I hope that those citizens have had a chance to watch their work because I appreciate it. Sanderson and Mr. Goble are members of the Regional Public Defender's Office out of Lubbock. That is a government corporation that provides representation to people who are accused of capital murder where the state is seeking the death penalty in counties that have 100,000 in population or less. And that is 195 counties in the state. And all these lawyers do is death penalty cases. So think about that. What they had done in this case, they have to do it in 194 other counties. The professionalism that they demonstrated to each other, the courtesy that they demonstrated to each other makes me a better judge, and I thank you. I thank the sheriff and his staff, bailiffs, and the rock in this room is the lady that's sitting right here in front of me. If y'all will retire to your jury room, I'll be back with some final instructions. Okay, thank you very much. All right. We are adjourned. Let me see counsel.
Athena Strand was 7 years old. She liked Barbie dolls. She lived in a small Texas town while her family worked on rebuilding their home. She stepped outside on a quiet November afternoon and never made it back inside. And that is what continues to make this case so difficult to process. Not only the violence itself, but how ordinary everything looked immediately before it happened. A driveway, a delivery truck, a child standing outside her home. Moments that, in almost any other circumstance, would have meant absolutely nothing. Cases like this become headlines, trials, evidence, legal arguments. But before all of that, they are about people. A child who should have had decades ahead of her. A family left carrying a loss that no verdict can undo. And a community forced to live with the knowledge that something irreversible happened in the middle of an ordinary day. Athena deserved the chance to grow up, to decide for herself who she wanted to become. And that future was taken from her long before it ever had the chance to begin. Rest in peace, Athena Strand.